Welcome back to another episode of the Castus Night Asterius. I'm Brian the Builder, and in this one, we are going to be using some of the Bob Smith Industries Uncure in order to remove the 6 magnets that basically comprise the shoulder connection and then the upper part of the shoulder connection. So those are just a little too weak and a little too set back. I also made my own little tiny measuring device here, right? And it's marked, first of all, I measured kind of the length of the stud here to figure out exactly how long it was, compared to the depth of the socket. And so based on that, I can see that the stud basically had about a 2mm gap to the back edge before I even started and never really even acknowledged all of that. So based on that, these new big fat 10-pound pull force magnets that I've got, one of them, when it's inserted on the inside of the socket, will make up that gap. The second one is essentially the depth of will have to be removed from this plug. So it should end up having great contact then on the inside, probably to the point where it would be very difficult to actually remove the shoulder, but it should still rotate very nicely. And that's just fine. The shoulder really shouldn't ever have to come off. So the ability to rotate it and have it not, slip is great. Then, once that's removed, that'll have to be drilled out. And then I've got the magnets I used in the previous arm build as well. These are 5-pound pull force magnets. And so once one of those is replaced here and actually making contact with all the other magnets that slot up into the shoulder joint, there should be no more problems with all of this. So this one is going to be a relatively quick video, I think, because it's going to be a lot of just waiting for the super glue to debond, right? And this takes a few minutes, and I think it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. So I'll just cut all of that out, the parts that I'm just waiting for it. And so basically, really, I guess I'll be back after I've kind of started removing or finding that this super glue is dissolved enough that I can start removing magnets. I did minimally check this stuff out because I've never used it before. And it does work. It basically turns the super glue almost to a gel. But I did also find that, even it says on the label, it dissolves paint. So I got a couple drips on my cutting mat, and it removed the white paint pretty much instantly, which in and of itself, I really don't care. This is just a cutting mat. And all the parts that are magnetized here that are going to get the Uncure, Debonder on it, aren't painted anyway. So, all right, I'm just gonna get to it. And yeah, hopefully I don't have to remove or replace any more magnets after this. This should be it really for all the magnetization as well. And then there's just a couple more minor little things to do before we start painting. Well, I was able to get the first one out of the shoulder here, and that little teeny one that's recessed in there actually will be perfect. I'm going to leave it in there, and it's essentially going to be used to make sure I have the correct polarity for this one as it goes in. These still don't really want to release, so I'm not too sure that I have to actually worry about it. Because the end of this plug is going to get cut off anyway. So once I cut that off, I should have full access to pop that out of there. The only one I really need to worry about is the one that's still inside there. So, well, I mean, I guess I have the other side of this as well. But, that one, both of these, all these are going to take some more time. I'll wait a little bit longer on these and see if I can pop them out of there. And then I'm going to move on to basically working on getting these out. Because if these guys don't want to come out of there, really, I'm just going to cut them off. So it doesn't really matter. These are the ones that matter the most because I do want to get them out of there so I can drill that hole out a little bit wider for these 3/8 inch magnets that won't sit into that recess. So, all right, more uncure and more waiting. Okay, so I did manage to get that one out of there. These two that were embedded in here were quite a challenge, and you can definitely tell how much I essentially kind of dug around where the magnet was sitting in order to be able to get a hold of it and get it out of there. That nub's going to get cut off, but I do still need to drill that out a little bit in order to get the thicker magnet in that should be in there. All right, so now that essentially insane process is over, now I can kind of mark a center and drill a little bit of a hole in here to hopefully get the new magnets in a good spot. All right, I think that's going to be it. I'm starting. Well, this one's all right, but this one we started to get just a little tear out right there. Right up in that edge. It'll be completely invisible once everything's done, but I think that should be plenty to house our new magnets. So I'm going to go in with the file and try to just clean that up a little bit more and square it off. Well, my only concern is that I have the depth that I need for the other arm pieces. Let's just grab this upper arm here to sit in and then have room All right, now I think before I do anything else with these, I'm going to clean up a little bit, and then I need to take some measurements to make sure that I'm actually getting the depth inside there that I need it to be before I move on and actually install any new magnets. All right, I'll be right back. So I set up a little bit of epoxy sculpt here to basically kind of fill in and fill around the magnet. And I have been able, wrong end. All right, so once that's on the correct end, it'll sit in there quite nicely. So it's pretty centered, but there's definitely a large cavity around it. So we are going to put a bit of epoxy sculpt down in the bottom below where the magnet's going to go. I'm going to attempt to even this all out even more. The layer up here a little too heavy. So now, and I'm okay with leaving a little bit of space around the magnet there to make sure that I can super glue it in after also. And through this whole process, I have realized that I truly hope I never have to remove magnets and replace them again. Because even though I'm pretty sure that the BSI, Bob Smith Industries, uncure to remove the super glue probably is actually great, super effective stuff, but it was still just a giant pain to actually get all the super glue out of there. It was not a fun process. So even with something like a super glue debonder, it's something I really don't ever want to do again. All right, nice and soupy. You get the magnet a little bit wet. And the challenge here is actually making sure that I'm pretty close to the center, because there's really nothing that's helping me stay in the center of all of this except my eyeball. All right, that feels really good. So it looks very centered, and even if there's some minor imperfections here, it should be good enough to harden up and have the magnet in the right spot, and may still need just a little bit of extra in there, but those two should be good for now. All right, so then the next step, I actually don't need all this at the moment. I'll probably need a little bit more later, but as usual, I mixed up a little too much. So what I usually do when I mix up a little too much is make something that I may be able to use for other things later. Oftentimes it just turns into weird little rocks. Sometimes I try to make animal horn kind of stuff that I can leave laying on the ground, that isn't just from like the Citadel skull pack. So we can get some weird little extra tidbits here and there. Well, at least I do, because I often have leftover bits of epoxy sculpt. So I can just sit off to the side, doesn't really matter, may not ever use it for anything again. Next, I do need to go ahead and actually use a couple of the giant magnets here to go into our sides. So we get all this out of the way for now. And so the little magnet on the inside is going to basically help me with my polarity. So these should go in and actually fit in there quite nicely. There should be no kind of leftover CA glue remover in there, right? So that should be all nice and dry. I'm going to go ahead and put, of course, quite a bit more super glue in. But, well, this magnet, it won't be able to be removed. So there's no way this one's going to go in and need to come back out. So once that guy drops in there, and I get him pretty centered, I'm going to hit it with some zip kicker here. Now we shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Just want to move it over just a little, hopefully without running into the same problem I did on the other side. Trying to get this guy to center is not that easy though. It's being pulled around by the other magnets in here. I think the massive one on the bottom is probably the most kind of biggest culprit. Alright, yeah, Yeah, the more I move it around, the more it's just trying to be pulled toward the bottom of the carapace here. So I think that's pretty well centered. All right, little zip kicker in there. All right, now massive arm magnets. Those things aren't going anywhere. The next thing I'm going to have to deal with is these and how they don't quite fit all the way in now, but that's okay. So once the next magnet is on, and we'll wait a second before we actually attach it, I need to kind of figure out how much of this I actually need to cut off to get it to sit pretty much where it is right there, right? I want a little gap, but not a lot. So this is going to have to find a home with a bit of this removed. So I'm going to basically take some very simple measurements here and figure out how much of this needs to come off. So I'll be right back. So I've marked on the knuckle there about 1/8 of an inch, so it's not perfect. But as I cut, right, it should help, and it should basically keep me pretty close to true. So it is about the right amount, right? So as long as I stay on the kind of end side of that black line, I should be removing the correct amount for this magnet to sit on the end and insert fully all the way into the side of the body. Now I can't touch all that, it's not set up yet. So inside there, right, it's not a problem, shouldn't be in the way. For this, I think I'm probably going to need to cut and come back just because I'm going to have to hold against the table surface to work on this, and it's going to shake the crap out of the camera. So I'm going to use my nice big flat resin saw and should have a nice clean cut. All right, so I'll be back in a minute, and hopefully these are nice and clean and perfect. All right, time for my next experiment here. All right, so I have the second magnet sitting in there so that they are polarized correctly because I'm not going to be able to use my hand to remove that. It's too far in and the magnets are just too strong. So we're going to super glue right there. And now the experiment is we're just going to put a little bit of zip kicker on that side, and then the hope is when they come together, I'm going to be able to actually use this to remove the magnet. Don't know for sure, so we'll see. We'll let that sit for just a second, and I'm going to do the other side. There's no problem with that, understanding how it wants to go in there. The polarity's set pretty quick. All right, so I'm not going to go crazy. Always add a little more after. All right, then a little zip kick around the post. So it's a little gap on both sides. It's not perfectly even, but once the shoulder armor's on, I don't think you'll be able to see that. But it's a nice gap, pretty even all the way around. So we're gonna hopefully, and I don't really think I'm ever gonna actually have to take these back out, but maybe. That's tough. It will rotate. No, it stayed in. Okay, so it's rotating, but the fact is that's just not quite enough time for that to set up. So we're going to do the same thing again. A little more. We're just going to set that in Now that should set up just fine. The kind of residual zip kicker that's in there should hold. So we'll give that a little bit more time to set up and cure before we go trying to pull the arm out of there. But just from that little bit, the magnets are very strong and they still rotate pretty nicely. So that should be fine. I'm not going to mess with that anymore right now. And in a little while, these sockets that we created just a little bit ago, here and here, will actually be set up and ready to receive the magnets from the upper arms. And then we should be back on track and everything should be final magnetized. All right, so back in a few minutes. All right, now the interior core here has set up for, well, I don't know, probably 12 to 15 hours. It's nice and solid. I sanded it off smooth. And it actually, excuse me, has about pretty much the perfect diameter. And everything will sit in and have very little room to actually wiggle in there. So as long as the magnet's making good contact, we'll be in real good shape. So in order to make sure that the magnet makes really good contact, we are going to use the full arm itself, well, upper arm, with just a little zip kicker right there, and I'm going to get most of it off. Just want a small amount. So when I place it in, the magnet will essentially bond instantly. So now, oops, be careful of that. The magnet should be set. Everything should be in. All right, we'll let that sit for a second. And I'm going to do the other one. So a little bit of glue in the socket. Way too much zip kicker. So I just want to leave, basically I'm just not wiping it off of the face of the magnet. I'm trying to get it off of pretty much everything else. Just don't want it puddling. And it shouldn't have a chance to touch anything else on the way in there anyway. Alright, so the magnet should be seated all the way down. It still rotates, so that part didn't get glued. But, it does separate. And now it's got quite a bit of pull force. Yeah, that is not, wow. That is not going to sag once that's all set. All right, let's check this one. Everything still rotates. Pulls out nice. Now, because the magnets were used to place the magnets, right? They had positive contact when they went in. They have positive contact now, and that's really strong. So I'm going to just pause for a second and adjust my camera so I can set the arms up on the night body. And we can take a look at whether or not anything still wants to sag or rotate because of the weight of things. So I'll be right back with a new camera angle. All right, well, based on this, I'd say our dude feels pretty victorious. So there does seem to be a spot kind of where the shoulder here will sag a little, but for the most part, it may just need that those two magnets need to be scuffed up just a little bit. Like, there's no way it's not tipping out in any way. So they just may be a smooth enough surface that they just don't want to hold perfectly in every spot. But for the most part, all these magnets are going to hold their rotations and their pose really, really nicely. So it's pretty awesome. It's kind of funny, I can kind of pick them up entirely by the shoulder now. It's really strong. Again, they're smooth though, so they may not hold perfectly with the weight out in front. I think I just have to scuff them up because there's no way they're not strong enough. They're just too smooth. But there's like that holds great now, right? There's no real sag in the joint whatsoever. So just a little scuffing of the big magnets on the internal area, and it should hold every possible position anyone could want to put them in. All right, so that's it for this one. The remagnetizing of the arms and shoulders. I really do hope I never have to do that again, because even though that Bob Smith Debonder works, it's not as nice or easy as I would like it to be. So I really hope I don't have to remove any more super glue. I ended up actually digging out quite a bit of the resin, and I'm pretty sure the, like, Bob Smith, whatever Debonder, I'm sure any Debonder would do the same. It was really softening the resin. So as I was trying to dig around the super glue, I was digging out a lot of resin as well, which, you know, for me, not such a big deal. I can use the epoxy sculpt to kind of rebuild pretty much anything I need to, but it would be better to not have to do that. So, you know, this all worked out great. All the magnets, the new magnets, are far, far better than the original ones. In the future, you know, I'll just plan on oversizing magnets for pretty much everything like this, to not have to worry about going back. So, and with that said, when you're looking to buy magnets, if you're going to buy magnets, I would suggest you pretty much always buy N52 magnets. And like K&J's got a great selection of N52 and N42. So, you know, depending on what you're doing, if you don't need a real solid connection, the N42s are fine. But for a minimal extra cost, N52s definitely hold better. And I would oversize things, drill out holes where you have to, and ensure that you're not going to have to redo anything. It's just safe. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. I love doing this stuff, so hopefully you guys like watching it. And it's been a lot of fun. All right, I'll see you in the next one.